Hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh. It is Monday, I was going to say the 4th. It's 4 p.m. It's actually, what date is it? I've lost track. Simon, what day is it? I think it's the 17th. It's funny when I do my Friday morning ones, I always actually write the date because as soon as you click live, you get like a brain freeze. But anyway, so I try and do something called the Growth Strategy Podcast, where I introduce you to interesting people that I think can help your business or career, regardless if it was Monday or Friday or Saturday or whichever. My guest today is someone I think it's really worth kind of talking to. Simon recently wrote a book, which we're going to talk about, but actually he's got a really interesting career which covers business and lots of different things, which we go into if you tune in every week. And yeah, hopefully if you join us the next 30, 40 minutes, it might be worth your time. And we look to, share and dig into some of the things to do with growth strategy, but running a business and that kind of thing as well, which hopefully is of interest. So there we go. Simon, you're now live. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello.
Perfect. So we know each other from like social media and stuff,
Yeah.
but we didn't necessarily know each other in person, at least yet. But so would you? But part of the thing, the fun for me in this is that because I interview people I'm interested to talk to, but I genuinely want to know the answer, as opposed to you see it all the time where people just ask generic stuff they don't really care about. And I think for me that's why it's always interesting to speak to genuinely interesting people. So yeah, would you like to give people like a quick 2 minute about yourself before we dive deep into your kind of career history and stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the invite. It's great to be here. Absolutely wonderful. So my name's Simon Clayton. I'm a marketing coach. And I'm also the term educator as well is probably coming more to him. I've been self-employed in this business for about just over 6 years now. I ran a previous business, which I'm sure we'll talk about in due course. But yeah, Marketing Skills Academy, I work with business owners of all shapes and sizes, looking at their strategic marketing plans, growth plans, and kind of how to implement really. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And you also wrote this as well, which is
And I also write books. Yeah, no, that was never meant to be a book. Never meant to be a book. That is my core coaching program that I deliver. And for a long time, I wanted something which was hands-on, dare I say, non-academic. It was just practical and a step-by-step process you could follow.
a roadmap.
And that's where Marketing Mastercard was kind of born from, really.
No, it's cool, and I've been through it. It arrived last week, and really, really good actually. But we'll touch on that a bit later on. So one of the things I always like to talk about is because I clip these up onto YouTube and that kind of thing. Is that I know when I went through like school and stuff, I didn't necessarily. Back in the day, it was quite difficult to learn what careers were. You had a careers advisor, which were generally crap.
Yeah.
And it was just, or you knew what your parents did, maybe a family friend or an uncle, and that was pretty much it. As where nowadays you've got the internet, you've got, well, basically you've got access to everything in the world. So because of that, it's a lot easier for people to find out what graphic design is or what I probably genuinely didn't even know what marketing was until I was probably at uni when I did my first kind of marketing module. And it's funny that, you never know that. I've just realized I had my Outlook ping up. And if I don't take it off now, sod's law is for the next 40 minutes, it will keep going off. And it was when I interviewed a chap called Tim Ward, where is it? Outlook, quit. His Slack kept going off. And it didn't matter what he did to try and turn it off. It just kept going. But then, we're all kind of real normal people that these kind of things happen that,
Yeah.
or if you're at home, if your door goes, it is what it is. We wing it, we improvise it. And then because of that, I think it's really useful for people to talk about their careers, but also how they got into business.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things we talked about last week was that I think schools often teach too much and they put too much focus on the academics that actually a lot of people aren't academic. That, there are other options out there, that it's not all or nothing. So the more they can learn from different people, and ironically, a lot of entrepreneurs maybe, weren't the best at school. It kind of gives them that foresight that if someone else can do it, they can too. Does that make sense? So whereabouts did you grow up?
So I grew up in Stockton-on-Tees.
I know it well.
Industrial working class town. When I was young, I had no idea what I wanted to be. Initially, it was going to be a police officer. Actually, that was always the plan. I was always a tall kid, and it was always the goal. Yeah, the place seemed a good move, and that was right until I went to sixth form, and then suddenly thought, do you know what? I think if there was ever any trouble, I'd probably run in the opposite direction. So I wouldn't make the greatest police officer. And then I got into I like creative writing, and I loved art, and I loved performing. So somewhere around that was the ideal, that was the plan. But I think at that time, the career path was always you did school, GCSEs, you went to sixth form college. I then went on to art college, and then I went on to university. You know, it was just kind of, as you say, there was no real careers advice there. So I went to university and I studied design, and the plan was to come away and be a graphic designer. And one of the modules on my degree was marketing, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Got a job in an agency when I left uni to do graphic design, and within 6 weeks they came to me and said, we don't think you're going to make a great designer, but we do think you make a really good kind of account manager. What do you think? And it was like, wow, well, yeah, all right then. And the money was better as well at that time. So yeah, let's go for it. And I spent about 20 years in agency land.
Wow.
Basically working.
You don't look that old.
Thank you. Well, that's the cue. No, it's lots of creams and stuff. Yeah, 20 years, Teesside, Newcastle, Manchester, and London. And that was where the real joy, I suppose, in marketing came in, seeing our businesses. I spent 3 years working on client side as a marketing manager. And I spent 3 years self-employed, which was the first business I had, which was running an internet business. But apart from that, the rest of my career was kind of agency side.
Oh, cool. Out of interest, when you started in graphic design, was it pre-computers?
You see, you shouldn't ask a grown man questions like that. Yes, it was actually. I remember, right, the first day, as we started the university, it was all on huge, big drawing boards. So the graphic design department was on these huge, big, drawing boards. And there was a computer that sat in the corner of the room that people used to go and stare at and push buttons and things would happen. But ultimately, I think it was just a glorified word processor. And then within the space of like 12 months, suddenly we were getting more and more graphic designers in who were very computer literate and Mac literate. And then, yeah, obviously that's when the explosion came and everything was done on Apple Mac. But no, it was very traditional, the first agency I worked for. And yeah, and well, you see what happened since then, yeah.
But it's funny, I've just got Louise Pot saying that a pre-computer. It's funny that with, so I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
And when I started, it was at the point where, okay, computers were coming in, but it was still relatively new. But, you were still taught to draw by hand. And ironically, I was really good at that. And just because even from when I was a kid, I loved to sketch and draw stuff. And it was just one of the things that I was kind of quite good at. And then, but I think realistically, I was always creative, but I didn't really realize it. But the thing that I love about the creative arts, if you want to call it that way, is the fact that you can play with anything. And actually, so many, I watched, I've subscribed to this thing called Masterclass, which is like an online app track thing where you learn. I've started one recently, and it's, Wayne Gretzky, the ice hockey chap.
Yeah.
But he's talking about the athlete's mindset. You have Gordon Ramsay teaches cooking and stuff. And there's a chap who teaches graphic design who's world famous, and I've forgotten his name, but regardless. But the point is he actually trained as a sociologist. And I think sometimes you have, a passion and a creative outlet, which doesn't always align with your job, but actually if it's what you do for fun. And almost, one of the things that I joked on my live stream on Friday when I was talking about how, finding something that you enjoy, this is my hobby. I love doing this. I love trying to figure out the lighting and the sound because it's the creative outlet. And, by the sounds of it, you had that. It was just, it took someone to kind of, hone it in and try and discover what was good for you.
Yeah, I mean, massively so. I think I always knew I'd end up somewhere in the creative industry somewhere, somehow. But what that looked like, I don't know. I mean, talking with my parents for enough at the weekend and this, so when I was a child, I used to create comics and stuff like that and plan clubs and all this. And, so there was always that there from a young age. But yeah, you're right. You can't put a creative mind down, can you, I suppose?
But that's what I noticed this again at uni was that so I did mechanical engineering, which is very technical, but in a class of 120 people on the technical stuff, the Chinese students would just blow the water. And they're so well drilled at following a process. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you said to them, what do you think about this? Can you lead a team? What be something creative, whatever, they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it was just funny that almost when you find your niche, if you have creativity inside you, it's a real kind of superpower that not everyone has. That actually, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, a solicitor, or whoever, you can use it in different ways. And I think it's something that I think people don't appreciate, you know, how important it is. It's as good, if not more important than, say, being good at maths or
Yeah.
whichever. So
Absolutely.
you kind of touched on it then, is that with you, how did you find the transition from working on the kind of agency side of doing what you were doing? You said it was about 20 years. At what point did you kind of start to get the itch to do your first business, and what was it?
Okay, so I think I suppose after about 5 years, I always thought, do you know what? One day I'd love to have my own agency, and I think you do kind of look around and you kind of, yeah, I could do that better than what they do, and you know. And I think for me, it was just meeting people and being with people. But the first real opportunity was when I was working as a marketing director for a furniture company. And the guy who, the MD at the time, was really hands-on, you know, fazed by nothing. And I learned so much from him in a very short space of time. And I suppose, you know, in a bad way, he kind of trained me up for me to leave and set my own business up. But, you know, it was great. And it was literally, and he empowered me to do exactly what I wanted to do in the office. You know, right, you're a marketing, some days I was doing operations, and I worked on a whole kind of e-commerce project. And for me, it was a massive learning curve, but it was a real vital learning curve, because it made me think, do you know what? There's some risk in here, but actually, ultimately, running the business looks fun. So my first business, my first business was, it was an e-commerce website, and I was basically selling coloured glass, for kitchens and bathrooms, and that's what we were doing. And this was somebody I'd met while I was in this organization, and that's how it all started. And the irony was that even though I was based in the northeast, based in Teesside, 90% of my customer base were in the south, because at the time when glass was just taking off in interiors and stuff, so I had a team in the Midlands who was manufacturing for me. I had a team of fitters in London, and I was literally a glorified agent taking payment online and so forth. And at first I loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it. And then suddenly I realized that actually once you've created something, that's it. And I was just running a business. And I had no desire to grow any bigger, bring people in. It wasn't nothing like that. It was just, you know, it was a lifestyle.
It was a creative thing. It was the challenge.
Exactly. Yeah. But that was it. It was set up, it was gone. And within about 18 months, it was like, I wasn't enjoying it. And the business was making good money. You know, we were making a good living for it, but I just didn't enjoy it at all. And so I think it was 3 years, I sold the business, and I went back into agency side again, which was really weird, from being my own boss for like 3 years and doing what I did, to going into a work environment. And I did feel a kind of sense of, I mean, the agency I work for are really good, and you know, they kind of said, just do your own thing, you know, business development, what are you going to. So went out there and did it, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it, and kind of thought, you know, marketing is what I enjoy doing. I love sitting down, solving problems, you know, creating things and seeing them grow, and then moving up the next project. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I suddenly realized that actually you've got to follow what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. And, you know, and that's when it kind of led into what I'm doing now.
Oh, cool. So out of interest, and this is just because I do something very similar as well. And by the way, I do love, and I'll just point this out to everyone else, I love the fact that you stand up. But I've tried over the years, because I've been doing video for like 10 years now. If I sit down, I'm terrible. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know whether to sit up straight. So I like to just bounce around and move, because this is why, you know, it's authentic to me. But it's very rare that you see someone else do it on the other end as well.
Well, I'll be completely honest with you, right? I've invested in one of these desks that go up and down. Absolutely
nice.
Brilliant. I thoroughly encourage it. If you can get a desk that, you know, the desk, absolutely brilliant. And the reason is, I'd love to sit here and say, well, it's because of a healthy thing, and, you know, I'm looking after my health and all that. But during lockdown, I suddenly grew this stomach. I honestly looked like I was expecting. And I thought, gosh, and it was just sat down all day, just looking at my screen. And I suddenly thought, you know, I've got to do something about that. and hence the reason for investing in the desk. And it's brilliant. And the other thing as well is, and I don't know what you're like, but even when I'm on the phone, you kind of walk around on the phone, and you do compose the best kind of conversations when you're walking around.
Your energy comes in.
Exactly.
And people can tell. And it's funny that with who was it? It was 2 guests ago on this. They were taking the piss out, but because before, obviously, we had a bit of a chat before I pressed live and goes live, and I was doing my warm ups and stuff, and he was like, "Oh my god, what's this guy do?" It was Ian Farrer, the Industry Angel podcast, and he was like, "Oh god, this guy takes it seriously," and it wasn't, but it was just the fact that in some ways, you always get a little bit nervous, but I just like to kind of, anyway.
Loosen up, yeah, absolutely, yeah, no.
But no, it is fascinating to see what you're saying about the business side, because a lot of business owners do fall out of love with their business, where it's almost, they generally start it for a reason, but at a certain point it becomes this chain around their neck that actually they kind of don't want to do it anymore, but they've got staff, it kind of pays their mortgage, and it can be a difficult thing. I don't think people really talk about, everyone always sells the dream about stuff, but actually you have to know what you're doing and build the business that you want. To really grow that, if that makes sense. And I think sometimes when people get trapped in something well-intentioned, it can actually be pretty bad, because at least in a job, you can always quit the job. If it's your business, you can't always.
Yeah. Now, do you know, I think it's the worst feeling in the world when you're self-employed and you don't enjoy what you're doing. I would advise anybody who, just doesn't enjoy what they're doing to kind of call it a day and do something else. Because it's probably the hardest slog, because you're more kind of hard on yourself because you chose to do this. You're not working for somebody else. This is down to you. And I do meet a lot of business owners who are kind of in that state. And I think a lot of it as well is to do with mindset. I'm definitely the last kind of 18 months, I've seen a lot more business owners now who've got great businesses, but due to the challenges and what they face, they've got a real negative mindset, or they're really they're in I suppose, a bit lost in place. And for me, it's so important because, if you're driving that business, and I do believe we all resonate, confidence and positivity. And if you go around resonating negativity, be assured the people around you will feel it as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to love what you do. And I'd say to anybody, if you're in that state where you don't, take a step back and have a good think.
I've got Simon Rudd, who follows all the kind of interviews and stuff, saying, I know how that feels. And it's true, you get a lot of people that you get in a position, and it's just, but I think when you've got other people that you can kind of confide in and talk to that are kind of going through something similar, I think it always kind of helps. Because I think I was going to pick your brains about your business, because I think it's always really interesting. But before I kind of do that, would you like to tell people like what it is, and then I'll go into it? It just makes a lot more sense. Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. So when I first became self-employed about 6 years ago, basically I was made redundant for the third time. And I've got to say, through no fault of my own, the business went bust. And it was a real bad time, I think, for smaller agencies. And I thought to myself, well, I'll be honest with you, the business went bust in June, and I had a holiday in Mallorca. So I had 6 days, and I sat on a sunbed in Mallorca. My wife said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm either going to look for another job, or I might start up on my own. And she said, well, you've whinged for the last 10 years about working for other people. Why don't you work for yourself? Give it 6 months. And at least if it doesn't work out, you can never say, well, I never did it. And real good advice. And that's what kind of, I suppose, was the push I needed to become self-employed. When I first set up, I set myself as an agency. So to the outside world, I could build websites, social media, PR, you name it, I could do it. Internally, I had a team of freelancers, and I was literally scooping off a commission off the top of that. Yeah. And what I realized very quickly was I became a very busy fool. And I was feeding everybody else's mouth apart from my own. And it was just by pure chance. I had a client who came to me and said, we've got it was a large pub restaurant group. And they said, we've got 20 units in the group. And I really need to teach them how to use social media properly. They're all different kind of backgrounds. We had the kind of high-end restaurant, coffee shop, and then what you'd kind of say the more traditional kind of pub. So I went round and I did a training course for them all. And I thought, this is brilliant, absolutely amazing, and it was just some really basic. And then from that, there was other opportunities came from Teesside University, Newcastle University. And I suppose it got me thinking, do you know what? First of all, it's me. It's my time. It's my experience I'm teaching. But also, it's surprising how many businesses don't think about strategy before they actually start launching their marketing, their sales campaigns. And there's a real need, as we know, to have a plan in place to think about what it looks like ahead, and that was the kind of the drama. I thought, do you know what? There's an opportunity. Hence, Marketing Skills Academy was born. And I say I work with mainly small business owners, micropreneurs, as I call them. And we look at their strategy and, on how they grow. And I say more and more now, it's also looking at mindset as well and kind of coaching, mentoring. And alongside that, and I've not mentioned this, but I lecture at Teesside Uni as a part-time lecturer as well. So yes.
No, it's cool. But I think one of the things that I find is almost it's really fulfilling when I like to feel valued, if that makes sense. So it's when you're working on the business and they actually appreciate what you do. It's nice. I've worked in places, paid employment, where they don't value what you do, and it's fucking horrible. And it's just, and for me, that was almost one of the main drivers, that the way that I structure what I'm doing is that I have about 3 or so clients on retainer that pay me every month. But I actually genuinely feel part of their team, and it's really nice to have that, because as a solopreneur, you can be quite lonely, if that makes sense. But actually, it's when you get people appreciate what you do is, I guess, what you get from the training, because you get some sort of kind of feedback.
I think that was the big thing. You're a partner. I always say to people, I come in as a partner. You know what I mean? As a non-exec partner to your business. Anybody who deems me as a supplier, it ain't going to be a great relationship. And I think that's also the reason why I always tell people, I'm totally unemployable now. And I do believe that. I think I'd make it a horrible employee. I think it's just because you've got that confidence and that experience now. And I really want people to do well. I love entrepreneurism. I love building businesses. You mentioned something earlier, which I was going to touch on, was I'm a massive advocate of getting young people into entrepreneurism and running business and understand how things go. So for me, it's really important that you hit that relationship where you do see each other as an equal and you do feed off each other. I'm never going to a business and say, do you know what, I'm going to tell you how to run your business. It's more the case, I'm going to come in as an extra set of eyes and ears and just see what other ways, that could improve or for the better based on my knowledge and experience, and hopefully they buy into that. And that for me is the perfect relationship, because then we grow together. I'm learning things, they're learning things, and there's success coming from it. So,
no, cool. So how long, you said you've been running the business? 6 years?
6 years, yes.
How have you found that process?
Wonderful. Run your own business. It's wonderful. Yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you. I thoroughly enjoy it. I love being my own boss. I love doing what I do. I've met so many interesting people. I've done so many interesting things. I've got high expectations for what's ahead, as we all have. I think the last kind of 18 months has been challenging. But there again, on the back of that, the last 12 months, I've had my best 12 months in business. So it's, ups and downs like any business, isn't there? I think what you just got to do is you've got to just keep focused on the good times, focus on the positives, and hopefully the negatives will come and go and not bother you too much.
Yeah, honestly, because one of the things that I found was that in the first 12 months, a lot of it is kind of you putting out feelers and you're trying to see where you, I'm trying to think, it's where you fit. Does that make sense? So you find what your lane is, because you have an idea. You said the same, that you started and you're off from PR and marketing and design and whatever. And actually, it's when you kind of find your fit and you say, okay, well, I understand what I am now.
Yeah.
But I think that does take 12 or so months. That I think one of the things I like to talk about is that when you said that your partner or girlfriend or wife said, oh yeah, give it 6 months. I think 6 months is tough, actually, because it's difficult to make it work and profitable after 6 months. 12, 18 months is when you know if it's going to work or not. But it's, even my first customer was actually in America. So the first 2 months looked brilliant, but then it went quiet and then it picked up again. And it's that balance of where I was like trying to be quite honest with how my journeys went, so that if you're 3 months into launching yourself and it's a bit quiet, happened to me, happens to a lot of people. And it's that kind of realism that I was trying to talk about, because one of the things that always annoys me is when you get people that all they do is sell the dream, and it's like more.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
that isn't fair on anyone, and actually, people don't believe you. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
No,
It's that
yeah,
trust side to it.
yeah. No, I mean, in fairness to my wife, I think the 6 months was literally just get on and do something and stop talking about it. Um, and you're right. Actually, from launch, I had a great kind of 6 to 8 months, and then it went quiet for a period. And there's, I probably got used to just having the work. And what I hadn't thought about was the fact that projects come and go. And I wasn't really kind of offering any retained work or retained services. It was just purely project by project. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that I've got it. My eldest daughter at the moment, she's at Durham University doing marketing and business. And we were talking the weekend about what life's going to look like after university, and she's thinking, should I go self-employed? I said, to be honest with you, I'd be happier, even though it's her life, she do what she likes, that if she got some experience somewhere first, because I do think you've got to experience industry in some shape or form first, and that commercial acumen before you then go into self-employment. Don't get me wrong, I know there's plenty of entrepreneurs who left school, and set up and have made millions of pounds. I know that. Personally for me, I just think just to get some of that commercial experience first in the real world before you run your own business, and also grow that network as well. We all know that business is about networking and growing that network of people. And that's really, really important. And that's the one thing that commercial experience does give you before you launch your own business.
Yeah, some people talk about beta testing your career. So if you fancy that, try that. If you don't like it, okay, well, I'll try that. And then you find you, but it's when you, that experience will come back at the right time.
Yeah.
But often too many people find themselves in an okay job, and they just stay there. They're miserable, but the risk of changing it. And then actually, especially whilst you're young, it's the time to kind of try something new. So you recently wrote this. I'm holding it close just because I crop in on here.
No problem at all. I'll just hold my copy as well, just to get the.
No, closer near your head. They can't see it. There we go. So I'll start right at the start, because again, with marketing, you're always like, what do people want to hear? Talk about what's your audience interested in?
Yes.
And a lot of people are interested in one day writing their own book. So I'm going to ask you the question: at what point did you, get the edge or the idea to kind of go through the process?
I would love to say again that I sat for hours and I thought to myself, I'm going to write a book, and I had this lovely log cabin looking over this lake, and I said, basically, I got some work via an enterprise agency, and they said, you're our marketing coach. I said, great. What do you want me to teach? Where's the material? Oh, you're the coach. You go and do it. And the space over kind of 3 to 6 months, I actually just sat down and thought, right, and what am I going to teach businesses? What do they need to know about marketing? And literally went through a very basic, I suppose, a strategy background. Well, you need to know your aims and objectives, and you need to know who your customers are. And I suppose you need to know about your research, about your competitors. And that was literally how it is bit by bit. And I was sat with a good friend of mine, and she just said, you know what? She said, I think this would make a great book. Mm-hmm. And at the time I said, nah, I don't write. I'm not an author. She said, no, honestly, I think if we could really, go to town on this and create a book. And that's where the idea came from. And within the space of like 6 to 8 weeks, the book was born. And
was that Helen Shinner?
It is, yes. It is Helen, yes.
Only because your name checker on the inside cover.
I did, yes. Oh, she was an absolute, tower of strength, yeah. And Gary Pickering, my designer, he brought it to life and did an absolute wonderful job on it.
So did you, how long did it take start to finish?
Once the concept was there that it's going to be a book, it was then about, right, how do we break this down into bite-sized chunks? Mm-hmm. And that's where we create this kind of the 6 pillars, the 6 stages of creating your marketing master plan. And I was very conscious at the start for any business owner to question why they're in business. Why does their business exist? So the first pillar is purpose. What's the purpose of your business? And then from that, you then look at, okay, that's where you look at your aims and objectives, why your business exists. Next stage is then intelligence. So what exists in your business already? Such as research, your network, all that kind of thing. And what do you need to know? That's where we look at our customer research, our competitive research. So at the third pillar, it was then about proposition, Because I do think a lot of businesses don't really know what their proposition is when they go to market.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you actually stand for? What you're telling people? Why should they buy from you? Then it was about tools. So you know yourself, there's a plethora of marketing tools out there across many disciplines. You know, and I think a lot of businesses get lost in that kind of forest of different tools. You know, the amount of times I've been to see business owners who say, well, I've got Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Pinterest, and I've got 3
Depends what you're
websites.
doing with them. It's the classic thing. Does just having the profile means fuck all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just kind of like overwhelm of all these platforms. And you ask, okay, well, that's great. What content are you putting on there? Well, I put Mabel's cake on there and the office cat sits on there. And it's, oh my goodness. And just drowning in all this content. So for me, it was like, okay, we need to literally rank your top tools. And for me, it's usually 5 or 6 absolute max in most businesses, what you need to use. And then from that, it was how do we apply that into some kind of process, system, or funnel, as we used to in this industry. And so I show, you know, that's the 5th stage, how you create your conversion funnel. And then the final stage, really important, how we measure our efforts. Because if you're going to put money, effort, resource into creating your strategy, you want to know you're making something of it and you're getting some return on your investment. The beauty of digital technology is as well, because it's so kind of agile. If something isn't working, you can change it very quickly. Unlike if you're paid for, you know, press advertising or a nice big billboard in town, but once it's up there, you can't take it out. You know, with digital, we can change it very, very quickly. You know, so hence the reason why, to me, measurement is so important.
Cool. I said in advance that I've marked up, I think there's 5 different sections. And it's, you know, I read a lot of books. I've read 3 books, including this one in the past 2 weeks. But I do because I enjoy it. I'm passionate about it. And I just like learning different stuff. So one of the things I thought would be interesting, which I know you know this, but I'm just telling people who might be watching, is that basically I picked out 5 kind of sections, and it was just concepts that I thought were genuinely interesting that made me go, okay, that, you know, I know we've got an interview coming up, so actually that might be worth kind of talking about. So I'm going to go to the first one. So it's page 21. Not that you memorized it. Ironically, when I wrote the roadmap, I actually pretty much have memorized what's on every page. It's so sad. But anyway, and it's determining if your products or services are demand high or low involvement purchase decisions. Would you like to almost explain what are high demand and low involvement purchases?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I suppose the technical or traditional term is FMCG products, such as fast moving consumer goods, whether it's lipsticks, Coca-Cola, whatever that is. We don't really need to think about that purchase. We kind of, you know, I'm going to get a can of Coke. We just go and do it. And it may take, you know, we may need to see a TV ad to remind us which brand of Coke to buy. A friend might have referred it to us or an advert, you know, it's a low interest purchase. We just go and do it. Then we know there are other purchases that we make, and other purchases where it takes a little longer. So, for example, you know, buying a car. So when we buy a car, it's very rare we just wake up and go, I'm going to go and buy a car today, and walk at the first garage, you know, hand over your money and drive out. You know, we go through a process of kind of educating ourselves. So that could be the first phase is looking online. We then might speak to friends and family. We then might buy a magazine. We're going to go around a few showrooms and talk to different dealers. We then might decide what car we want and then look at the different models. That is a longer process that we will take, you know, in order to determine whether we're going to buy or not. So that's really the difference. And we need to be mindful of this in terms of the products and services we sell. You know, is it going to be a quick sell, you know, or is it going to be the case that we need to map out some kind of journey in order to convince our customers that, first of all, we exist. Secondly, we are the right choice for what they're looking for, you know, and finally convert them into a paying customer.
Because I think for B&B, my mind has gone to pot. I think, anyway. But yeah,
Monday afternoon, you're all right.
Oh, God. Wait till Friday morning. It's funny. You see my enthusiasm just die over the weeks when I do my 9 a.m. Fridays. That's why I'm always dosed up on coffee. But I think for B2B, this is really interesting because what I was trying to do is take the concept and then learn to apply it. And I think a lot of people, as you said in the example, they might have a Facebook account, but it's crap on it. And for most B2B purchases, especially the higher the value, people want the interaction. They want to know that there's trust there. They want to see you. And actually, in terms of your marketing strategy then, so for instance, when you do interviews, but you do them regularly every week and you talk to interesting people and you can show your authority and expertise, it's the repetition. If you only ever did one, Okay,
Yeah.
fine, but you want to do it all the time. And I think it's when people actually realize that it's that trust point that the more they see you, because I know Twitter's one of your big kind of platforms,
Mhm.
but they see you on there and they see you all the time on there, you
Mhm.
become part of someone's like group that you then are more likely to get considered
Yeah.
than someone who's equally qualified that they've never heard of or they've heard of once. Does that make sense? And it was
Absolutely.
just, but I thought it was just a really interesting concept. I think in B2B stuff, people don't consider enough. Does that make sense? Also true at B2C. And likewise, I'm in the process of buying a boiler at the moment. And it's the kind of thing, so it kind of sits between a Mars bar and a car where I'm
Yeah.
shopping around a bit, looking at different people,
Yeah.
but I'm still doing my homework. And one of the
Mhm.
big things for me was on Trustpilot reviews. It's
Yes.
that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I'm not going to check every review, but I can see that people have used the service, that they think it's generally good. And it's that risk aversion. I just thought it was a really interesting concept.
But also, just on that note, you're probably looking at two angles because you're looking for a new boiler. So first of all, you're looking for which boiler suits your requirements, your needs, and your desires. So you're probably looking at different boiler makes and different boiler manufacturers. But then it's finding a supplier or a fitter who's going to actually do that for you. So then you're looking at their brand and how important their brand, how well they know, So you can see where all this kind of fits in this
Mhm.
kind of process.
Which links seamlessly to the next page, which is all to
Hey.
do with customer touch points. Do you want to touch on that?
Yes. So on average, the psychology tells us 6 to 8 times we need to experience a brand before we purchase. So that means we need to get in front of our customers at least 8 times for them to know that we exist, to know that what we provide is right for what they need, that we answer their pain points, the price is right, etc., before they convert and buy from us. So again, if you think about what we've just talked about, if it is a B2B product where it's high-end purchase, that could be a whole range of different things that we've got to experience first, ranging from a look at the website, customer testimonial,
Mm-hmm.
case study, it could be a webinar, face-to-face meeting, long before we
Yeah.
actually start talking about the actual physical product that we're going to buy or service we're going to buy. And that's where we start to think about our touch points. And that kind of ties in nicely when I talk about choosing our tools. Each tool has its own merit, its own worth. So I would never or very rarely use Facebook or social media just to purely sell. For me, it's about awareness, making people exist, growing a community, growing a relationship with people who may buy from me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I may use other things such as my website or videos, or, free brochure to then try and convert them. I wouldn't rarely try and convert them just purely on
Yeah.
social media. And that's where your touch points come in.
I don't know how much, say, Mark Ritson, you kind of follow. Mark Ritson's a famous
Yeah. Oh,
marketing
yeah.
British guy, Australian, he swears more than I do. But and he talks about the study from Burnett and Field where it was 60% long-term brand activation, which
Yeah.
for me is what this is. It's where
Yeah.
people get to know your voice, your sound, whatever. And then 40% kind of your sales, short-term sales cycle stuff. And what's quite funny, so every Saturday, my wife and I, we walk from Lowfell, where we live, into Newcastle, get a coffee and a pastry and walk back.
Yeah.
And on the way back through Gateshead Town Centre, back to near where we live, there's this one billboard. And every week, it's always the same McDonald's advert. But so it's a McDonald's advert, but you see them change between the branding and then the sales activation. So the branding is generally, it's an abstract M to do with the lifestyle of people that buy McDonald's.
Yeah.
And then they'll do that 2 out of 3 weeks. Then the other one, it'll be cheeseburger 99p. But what's fascinating is to see someone actually implement this.
Yeah.
And it's, the bigger companies generally know more about what they're doing. But it does kind of work is that if you just talk about your products or services, you're not building momentum or weight over time. And that's why you should really kind of do both.
The psychology behind it all, and we can go on for hours about this, and this is something we should have a chat about the pub, but the psychology behind branding is so clever and so deep. We take it for totally exactly for granted of what we see these days, but it is so clever the way it does convert.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, McDonald's being a perfect example of I always say to my students at the uni, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you see the big yellow M, we all feel it. Oh, it doesn't matter if I never eat. There's a McDonald's here. Whether you're a meat eater, vegetarian, whatever, you just know
You
there's
trust
some
it.
kind of exactly. You know what
You
I
know
mean?
what it is. You know what the price is going to be.
A recognizable mark that you know is across the world, and so yeah, it absolutely we can go very well with that psychology.
Yeah. One that I thought was really interesting actually is understanding the difference between consumers and customers. Would you like to touch on
Yes,
that?
absolutely. Really, really important. I think everybody views customers, sorry, rephrase that. I think a lot of businesses view customers as people who buy. And especially within B2B, you might have a purchasing team who will buy, say, office furniture, but that purchasing manager or purchasing team may never use that furniture.
Mm-hmm.
So they are the customer, but they are not the consumer. They're buying on behalf of somebody else. So your consumer is always a person who consumes that product, who uses that product, not necessarily the purchaser of the product. We need to be very mindful of that when we look at how we address our sales messages, how we sell in there. If you're buying on behalf of someone else, you probably want to know, is it more value for money? Is it fit for purpose than what the actual emotional connection is? Whereas if you're selling direct to the customer, it could be the case, yeah, we want to know what that emotional connection is. So again, the psychology behind this, there's two separate kind of trains of thought here, whether it's consumer or customer. It could be the same, it could be the same, but ultimately we need to be very mindful of that when we're creating our marketing and sales strategy.
No, I think the example in the book was hotel chains and toilet roll. I think, and it was,
Yes.
but it was just very clever that yes, someone in purchasing for a core hotels will buy a million toilet rolls,
Yeah.
but it's their customers that are going to use them. And it was a mindset that when I read it, I was like, oh, it's interesting. So again, with both of our courses and stuff, the customer is generally the business owner.
Yeah.
Although some people say fund, but the consumer is the people within their business who actually use it. And it was a nice mindset that I thought was really interesting to talk about. So we're going to jump onto USPs.
Okay.
And just so make a brilliant YouTube 7-minute clip.
Yeah.
What are they? And then the example I thought was really good was the Virgin Holiday like a rock star example.
Yeah. So unique selling proposition is basically what makes you different from your competitors. What makes you different? And a lot of businesses get caught up in this, that it's got to be something that's out of this world. It's got to be absolutely revolutionary. It doesn't need to be. One of the best examples is probably is Uber. We've had taxis for years and years and years. They didn't suddenly invent a new kind of taxi. They just came up with an app. And suddenly it's like, oh my goodness, this is revolutionary. We can actually, well, it wasn't. It was just a different way of doing things, a different USP. So, it's about thinking about what the minor or the major things are that differentiate us from our from our competitors. The example I use is Virgin Holidays. When Virgin launched Virgin Airways, the market was incredibly competitive. British Airways had sold up for many years. And as consumers, we'd all just got used to that. That was the norm. British Airways had just created the norm. And Virgin came along, and Virgin being the brand it is, just said, look, we're not going to compete in terms of we've got aeroplanes, and they look nice and shiny. We need to focus on the experience. What is the Virgin experience that differentiates us from every other airline? And we all know that, Virgin is a very cool brand. It does things differently. And because of that, that's the kind of the strategy they went in with their USP. And it worked really well for them, really well. They started to really hit market share for British Airways, and obviously the rest is history.
Okay, I just thought it was a really good example. Can I ask you a really poignant, both topical question?
Go for it.
What would be your USP?
My USP, dead simple, making success achievable.
Okay. Nice.
That is my USP, making success achievable for small business owners. And that's basically, and a lot of people say, and this kind of opens up new questions, what does success look like to you? For me, success is about making a positive action or a positive movement within your organization. That's what success is, and you being happy about it. So yeah, making success achievable. And it also ties in nicely with Marketing Skills Academy, it's the MSA.
Nice. Because one of the things that I always, when I work with different people as well, it's the fact that it's you. So people will like you, some people will like you, and some people will like someone else. The point is, it's people often forget that you and your own personality and mannerisms and background and approach, there might be, so like when I do business coaching and people hire me to help them grow, generally a lot of my competition is 20 years older, very old school, but it's a different animal. But if you want that, hire that. And I think people often miss that a lot of people that follow this kind of stuff are people that want to set up on their own or kind of have done as freelancers, could be copywriters, could be anything. And really just own and be honest about who you are
Yeah.
And that can be, as long as it's unique, relevant, and authentic. That's the main thing.
It's all about your personal brand, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for me, you'll see at my website, I always say I'm not for everybody. And I know that I'm not for everybody. And I don't want to work with everybody. There's a certain kind of business owner I want to work with. And you can probably tell northern accent, I say how it is. I try and motivate as much as possible, but I'm also incredibly honest and authentic as well, and yeah.
No, cool. But my point is, I think people miss that. And it's almost that when, when I'm talking to my wife and she's a solicitor and she's going to post on Twitter, my point always is, yeah, but what do you think about it? What's your opinion? Yeah. Because if they want just that's what makes you memorable and unique. Yeah. That ironically, the book I finished yesterday, no, it wasn't. It was the one I've started yesterday. It's called Predictable Revenue. And it's all to do with big global scale ups about how, anyway. And on the back cover, so yours is blank at the bottom where it gives the bio of the guy.
Yeah.
I was reading it through and it was all quite interesting. At the bottom, he says, the so-and-so chap lives in Edinburgh. He's got 10 kids. I was like, 10. But I suddenly started to question his judgment because I was like, for one, why would you want 10 kids? But actually what it did was make me think on a moral level. I don't know. I'm going to have to take what he says with a pinch of salt, as opposed to it's just he's, I'm guessing, decided to have that many children, and just morally for me, we don't have kids, but almost where it actually, some people might love that, but to me, it actually made him trust a bit less because I thought actually it's, I don't want to get into the moral dilemma about having 10 kids, but there's finite resources in the world, and it is what it is.
Is it also the case, Dave, that he's got 10 different kids with 10 different women?
Well, that would have been so much more interesting. If it said John Smith has 10 kids with 8 women, I'd be interested because I thought, player.
Yeah.
But that to me would be more Virgin Rockstar than, Brady Bunch. But anyway, but it's true. But this is what and what was also interesting is that I haven't actually Googled the guy yet. Yeah. But with the language of the first I'm about 40 pages in, I'm going to guess he's American because it's very brash.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what was quite interesting, was that you came across as very friendly with your tone and stuff in this in a nice way. And that's why I try and approach it. But even your writing style can come across of some people like the really hard hitting stuff, but actually often I actually hate, I despise that. And then last but not least, it was all to do with drip versus burst campaigns. I thought this was really interesting.
Yeah. Again, when looking at your marketing across a period of time, it doesn't always have to be a large scale campaign. I mean, for most small businesses, budget is really tight anyway. So what I tend to look at is actually having maybe 2 or 3 bigger campaigns, and then drip feeding in between those your marketing. So you may say, right then, we're going to run a 12-month brand campaign, which is going to drip feed throughout. But there again, in the summer, we might have a big branding campaign, or we might have a product launch in spring and autumn. So they'd be big campaigns, but the rest of the time we're going to drip feed. So it doesn't necessarily have to constantly be, right, we've got to spend big money month on month doing these massive campaigns. You can get just as much value if you do a drip and a burst and a drip and a burst. But it all depends on your audience. We know that most business is seasonal. While some businesses do incredibly well over Christmas, other businesses go dead. Likewise, August, September can be quiet because people are on holiday. Other businesses, if you're a holiday company, it's probably your biggest time of year. So we know that there's different seasonalities across all different types of groups, different businesses. So because of that, I always advise, right, let's build big campaigns in order to hit those, and then drip feed in the quieter times. So you're still showing up, but you're not spending wasted cash.
No, it was just a really interesting way to categorize that kind of thing, and I just thought it was really interesting. Before I start to wrap up on some of the other stuff, what's the dream for you?
The dream? Wow, good question. I've probably got thousands of dreams. It's going back to what we started with, really, is that creative mind. It's like a tree, you've got strands off. Obviously, I want a sustainable business, so I want to keep doing what I'm doing. There are some new projects I am working on at the moment. Personal branding being a very big area that I'm seeing a lot of interest in. So that's something I'm going to be looking at. I'm just about to launch my first online training course, which is Supercharge your digital marketing strategy. So that's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 weeks. There is another book bubbling. Not a form at the moment, and I'm actually writing this as an author, not as somebody who's going to say, oh, there is an idea there. So that's going to happen. I would like to do a lot more public speaking.
Okay.
I do enjoy this, and I would like to see a bit of the world on the back of it. So yeah, I think if I was to look forward, if I was 3 years from now, I'd like to think I was touring the world a bit and speaking, doing what I do.
Cool. But I think some same is that where at the moment, obviously, I launched the Roadmap MBA and stuff, and that's going quite well. Got my first customer in China today, which is quite cool.
Brilliant.
I only launched it 13-14 weeks ago, so it's still relatively new.
Yeah, well, I obviously got your book, and so yeah, thanks.
No, that's all right. But what I was going to say is that that for me that's what's going to keep my mind occupied for the next 30-40 years. That I enjoy being part of people's teams when I do retained work.
Yeah.
But what will keep me sane, because I actually think I'll never retire because I'm not that kind of person. I always tinker with stuff.
Yeah.
That when right at the start, when you said about creativity and building something and doing something, I now have that I think that will hopefully stop me having a midlife crisis, and because it's there to build. But the dream for me, and I joke, it's to work 4 days a month. So it's to earn enough that actually all my bills and that are covered. I want to travel, and I would love to speak at conferences and do stuff. And everything I'm looking to do is towards that. So it was, again, I always pick people's brains about how, when people build a business and they say take on staff.
Yes.
It's almost, hi David, by the way. It's almost the fact that you can very easily get trapped within the business that you build, which actually stops you from being able to travel the world and take a year off or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm purposely consciously trying to build towards what I want, and that's why I'm always interested, because we're in a very similar position, and it's just seeing what the dream is. But
I've actually I've just hired a team. I've got a VA team now, team of VAs, sorry, and there's about 6 of them in the team, and they're just starting to pick up my day-to-day now. So it's really important for that strategic thinking, and I think that's one thing. It's very easy to work in your business and not on your business, as we hear. I decided to start the year, I've got to pull back at some point and start, because you do become a very busy fool, and just through the pure love and joy of it. And it's funny you talk about long-term employment, because I'm exactly the same. I don't think I'll ever retire. I definitely couldn't just stop at 65 and that's it, right? That's it. Business is done. I'm retired. That would just drive me crazy. But then I jokingly say to my wife, you'll just come at the office one day and I'll be lying on the desk dead. So there'll be some happy medium in between that, I'm almost sure. But yeah, I love what I do. Why stop? And yourself, with the growth map, that business changes so much that the incarnation of your growth map now is going to look completely different in 18 months' time, 2 years' time. Who knows? And that's the excitement in the industry that we serve. That business is forever changing, constantly changing. It keeps me young, just trying to keep a grasp on what's happening out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest drive for me. I'm really passionate about continuing until the doctor says stop.
No, cool. So I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
So I end every kind of interview with a few kind of basic questions, and this gets its own section on YouTube, which for me is partly the most valuable bit, and I tend to clip these up and use them again and again, or repurposing it and stuff. Would you be happy to share what's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
Yeah, I will do. I mean, obviously, there's the old adage about cash is king and how important cash is, and we realise that. But one of the best bits of advice I was given when I was an exec in a company, director sat me in his room one day and he said, you've got to understand the power of the network, and you've got to start building your network now. Think about the different people who are important for you to do your job, the people who are going to help you move through life, the people you might need when you're having a bad day, and literally spoke through it. And that just kind of amazing. And I remember him drawing this kind of spider graph and how it all kind of branched off. And it has been so powerful for me and my brand and my business and my, when I previously employed, that whole power of the network, and grow your network. So yeah, if any advice, I suppose, that kind of really resonates is grow your network and keep growing it, keep meeting people, keep developing those relationships, because you never know when you need them or when you're going to meet those people again.
No, I think it's really interesting. Actually, it was a lady called Jenny Smith who runs a networking Know Who event up here, and what's something that she said, because I did her online course on Udemy,
Yeah.
and it was this one concept, and often you only takes the one gem, and you're like, mind blown.
Yeah.
But it was to do with how when you make a first impression or you get to know someone, that will, you're not just meeting one person, you're also meeting everyone they've ever met and everyone they ever will meet. So if you
Yeah.
can make a really big impact with someone
Yeah.
and they love it, they're going to tell other people.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind, because it's, you often get people that are a bit shirty or they're a bit shitty or whatever. And, likewise, we've all worked in our careers where there's people that you just don't trust and you just don't like. And it's not that I tell people, but I'm a little bit cautious, but your reputation sticks, and that is your brand in many ways.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I would say, which just relates to your talk and the book, is that a lot of people are well-intentioned and they do stuff. But if nobody knows who you are, they can't buy your stuff. So, you might be the most ethical engineer, because engineers are famous for hating to do anything public. But if nobody knows who you are, they're not going to offer you a job. And the reason why this is important is that we've both been made redundant in the past. That actually it's through that network and actually people knowing who you are and whether they trust you or not. That if you were to put a post out saying, look, guys, something really bad's happened, I'm now looking for employment, can anyone help me out? You'd probably get a lot of people apply, right back to you, or at least want to help you. As where if you're a complete stranger, you might get one or two, but that's the value of your network. And I think that's a really good one. That's cool.
Yeah.
If you were to give advice to your younger self, and you could pick any age, any part of your career and stuff, what would it be?
Have more confidence, and
Nice.
don't rest too much on the negative. I think I always say that I should have been self-employed much sooner and done this a lot sooner. And I think part of that was I had people who I respected, who I thought were looking out for me, give me advice and kind of put me down. And to be honest with you, I just wish I'd never listened to them. And so, but we all know, we all work for a bad boss at some point. So, I'm sure but for me, it was very much about, just follow your instincts, follow your passion as well. That's what I would say.
That's good. But often you learn more from the bad bosses than you do from the good ones. Because
absolutely. Yeah. Well, anyway, I better watch what I say, but yes.
But it's that kind of thing that so especially some of the younger people that I kind of work with, it's the fact that if you disagree with what someone's done, at some point you'll be making that decision.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll know what to do or not do based on other stuff. So it's not always the end of the world if something bad happens, because actually it's improving your skill set just to kind of know and experience these kind of things.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go? I don't mind if you want to do another plug for the business and the book.
Well, obviously, Marketing Skills Academy. I'm happy to work with businesses of any shape sizes. That's the coaching program. I also work on looking at personal branding. I can do individual training courses like LinkedIn, social media, that kind of thing. That's number one. I'm going to get 3 here. Number 2 is obviously buy the book, Marketing Master Plan. It is on my website. I can send you the link to that. It's actually on a special offer at the moment. It's £15, including postage and package, which is an absolute steal. And finally, I have a Facebook group called the Micropreneur Academy. And basically, it's a community I'm growing of micro businesses. I put some training in there. It's a relatively new group. I would love to see more members, more ambitious business owners join. There's my 3 requests, please.
Cool. No worries at all. I've really enjoyed kind of catching up and just talking a few different things, because
Me too.
You don't often get the chance to go into detail on some stuff, but then likewise, when repetition helps. So the point is that when I've noticed this, actually, the more books I read and the more knowledge you get on a topic, you then read the next book quicker, because you've already got all the base load and stuff. And actually you can just learn your craft and learn different stuff. But I also like to learn from different people and get their mindset and their ideas, because actually that is how you get better, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And, sorry, Jonathan Park saying he wants it signed and delivered by you, Simon. So I'm sure if you reach
Not a
out.
problem.
He will help you out. I'm just going to move my mouse across to there. Fair enough. But no, I genuinely appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure to kind of speak. This gets clipped up and it goes onto YouTube and it goes onto Spotify and Google and loads of different things. And yeah, thank you for your time. And please connect if you want to get to know him any better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Cool. See, now I get to jump back on my client work.
Yes.
Anyway, have a good day, and I'm sure
Lovely.
I'll catch up soon. All right, cheers, mate. No worries. Bye bye.
Bye bye.